Hi there, welcome to this next video in our series where we are building a Power Apps application connected to Dataverse. In the previous video, we saw what are Dataverse tables, and now we are ready to create our first table. As we can see here in our diagram, we are going to create our first table that's going to store products. So we have here the table that we want to create. We saw before that in the make.powerapps.com we have the tables area, and we could create a new table in here. But I recommend to do in another way. We need to create inside a solution. I also mentioned in the previous video that I was going to explain what are solutions. So every time I start a project, I create inside a solution. A solution is like a bucket that you can put everything inside. You can put tables, apps, flows, and other things that we have inside the platform. We can use solutions later in order to move this solution, this app, flows, tables to another environment. In professional projects, normally we have three environments, one for developing, one for testing, and one for production. It's good to have a solution and start to get used with these concepts. Let's see, for example, a solution that I have in here. I have one called Inventory Management that I created for another app. If I click inside it, I can see that we have, let's see, it's loading. What do we have in here? Okay, I can see we have several things here. Apps, for example, I have two apps. I have security roles. That's about security of the data we are going to see later in the series. We have sitemaps, we have tables, web resources, we can have Power Automate flows, and so on. Then if I wanted to export this, I could export the solution and import in another environment. So let's create our solution for this application. Here on New Solution, we can give it a name. I'm going to call Commercial System. Then we need to select a publisher. Okay, I already have my publisher here. It's called RBA Digital. But if you don't have one, you can create a new publisher. Okay, I'm just going to edit mine to show where are the fields and explain a little bit. But you will fill the name, the display name. You can put spaces on it. It's fine. Then it will give us the internal name. We can put a prefix. In my case, I put RBA. So everything that I create will have this prefix. Everything, a table, a column, will start with RBA in the beginning. And this publisher helps to identify who created this solution, who created this entire application. Imagine a situation that we have multiple vendors creating multiple apps. So each vendor can have a publisher, and then we can identify who is the responsible. We can even put the contact information here if we want. Okay, in the properties, this is generated automatically based on the prefix. And here's an example of how things are going to be created. They are going to have this RBA in the beginning for my case. Okay, you can click on save. Once the publisher is created, select, and then you click on create. It takes a couple of seconds and our solution will be ready. It will already go to the solution and it's going to be empty because we still didn't create any item inside it. Now we can create our table. In this video, I'm going to create just the products table, and then we are going to see in the next video how to connect it to a model-driven app and maybe to a Canvas app, because there are two types of apps. So let's create this table now. Let's go to our solution. I'm inside the solution. I can go and create a new table and then select table. Okay, in this table, I can give the name, that's product. And then it gives the plural name automatically. So the display name should be the singular name. Okay, we have a primary column here called name. We can rename it. So I'm going to call product name. Do this right now because as you can see, it creates the schema name, and that cannot be changed later. So if you just keep as name, then it will be name forever. In this case, I'll call product name. Okay, we can make business required. By default, it's required, or we can choose to be optional or recommended. There's no difference between the two, just a sign that shows in the model-driven app, we will see later. If it's recommended, then there will be something showing that's recommended. Let's keep it required, and this will be a text column. We also have advanced options. Usually we don't need to play with it, but we have several configurations here that we can enable or not. Let's keep it simple, but know that we can have several configurations here. For example, we can apply all these changes to the data, so we can track all the changes and who changed that. That's very important for a production level app, because then we can see who changed things in case something goes wrong. But right now, let's keep it simple. Just create a table. In the future, if we want to enable any of this, then we can come here and enable, right? This will create our first table. We still have to create the columns. The table now has loaded. We can see that we have already columns on it. As I mentioned in the previous video, we have several columns that are by default in there. For example, created by, created on, modified by, who is the owner of that record, and so on. Here is the product name. That's the primary name for this table. This is the product name where we are going to type the name of the products, as the name says. And we have this other one that's a very important and we use a lot. That's the product column. It's the same name as the table. Is the column that has the unique ID. This is a GUID and unique ID that's auto-generated once a record is created. We still have to create all the columns, but we could go back to the product table and we could view the data here. Here we have a simple tool to view the data, and we could also edit. Here we can see all the columns. We still don't have any records, and we can select the columns that we see right here. These are columns that are auto-generated, so we cannot edit it. They are going to be filled automatically once one record is created. The only one that we can edit at this moment is the product name. That's the one we just renamed when we created the table, the primary column. See here, if I go to the right, I can also drag here to the beginning, and I can create a new product already from here. 01, just to see what happens. It shows that I created this one at this time, and the other fields, some of them are empty. Let's see the GUID, that's the unique ID. It's called product, is the name of the table. For each table, the GUID will be the name of the table. So I'm going to select it, click on save just to show it in here, and bring also to the beginning to make easier to see, close to the name. This is the ID. It's a unique identifier ID for this row. Okay, now we have the table. We need to add our custom columns. Let's see on our diagram what we have here. We have product name. That's already created because it's the primary column. Then I want to generate a product code that's going to be auto-generated. For example, BRD, that stands for product 0001. And then once I create the second, it will be 002 and so on. I want to add a description, an image to this product, a tag that's going to be a yes or no column to say that's if this is a bestseller product, because later in the app, I want to highlight this product for the customer to easily identify what are the best sellers. And I want to add a category. It's going to be a choice column that has several categories. I mentioned that's going to be a beer app, but I could also add other drinks if I want, and that's why I added this column. And here I added some types of drinks. Okay, so I'm going to go to the table, go into columns, and then I can create a new column. This is going to be called product codes. Here you can see all the data types that we can create. We can have texts, numbers, dates, lookups that does a lookup to another table, relates to another record from another table. We are going to see later in the next tables. Chart conversion between currencies, file, auto number, and formulas. In this case, it's going to be an auto number. So I'm going to select auto number. It's optional. We can set up the prefix, what's the type. So for example, in this case, it's going to be a string, but PRD. Now we see the preview. So we have 4 digits. It starts at 1000, but I'm going to put starts at 0. Then it starts PRD 000, PRD 01, and so on. Every time we create a new row, it will be generated automatically. We also have date prefixed number. See, it puts the date of the creation. We can choose the formats. And we have custom. We can use a type of formula here to create a custom one. Usually, I always use string prefixed. So let me put PRD and start on number 1. Okay, then I'm just going to save. And here's product code. It's an auto number. We can see that starts with the RBA. That's the code I put on my publisher. Same for product ID. That's just product and product name. So all the custom columns start with RBA if I create it inside the solution. Every time you want to add a column to a table, go to the solution and then add. Otherwise, it will add another ID here and doesn't look as good as having this all the same. Okay, if I go back to my table, I can put it here just to view it. Let me see. Just wait for it to load, and I'm going to bring that column here to this view. Let me just show this column, and it's the code, product code. Okay, here. I'm going to hide the other columns that I don't want to see because it just bothers me here. I don't want to know about them right now. This is not the end interface for visualizing and editing data. It's just to help us to visualize right now, but later we are going to have a model-driven app or a Canvas app to do that. So product codes, just drag to the left. I cannot edit because it's auto-generated. And for the items that are there, it was not generated. So it just works for the new rows that I add to this table. Let me add a beer 02 here. And we are going to see it being generated. See, PRD 001. For this one, it doesn't have. So it's better to have the table created, all the columns configured before adding the data. Going back to the columns, let's add the description column that's a bigger text. Let's go to new column, then add the description. And then inside text, we have several options. Plain text, that's just a single line. Text area, that's a bigger space for writing text. And we also have rich text that we can type HTML. We can add style to this text. Let's try this one. Okay, let's see what we have here, just simple. In the advanced options, we can set the maximum characters count. 100 is too little for a description, so I'm going to put, let's say, 1000. You can always go back and change later in case you forget. Okay, so it's going to be a rich text. Save. Let's add the other columns. I'm not going back here to the products right now. Let's add other columns first. Product image. This is going to be an image column. So I'm going to add a new column and call product image. we have here file and then image. We can say that this is the primary image. This means that when we have a model driven later, it will show as the primary image, and we can see in the top of the records details. Then we have the maximum size. Can store full images. That's very important because otherwise it won't store the whole image and you cannot recover the full image to use in the app, for example. Let's click on save. While it saves, let's see what's the next column. Is bestseller yes or no? So we have a yes or no type. Display name is bestseller. We have inside choice yes, no. So we only have two choices. We can have a default one that's no in this case. And then if it's a bestseller, someone will go there and change to yes. Okay, let's just save. And then we have category, and we will have 5 types of drinks here. Okay, let's add a new column. I'll call product category. I had just category here, but I'll put product category. It makes clearer. Okay, the type is a choice. And here we have two options. We can select a global choice. This means we can reuse this choice in another table, or a local choice. If it's a local choice, we just configure here and it just works for this table. Another table cannot use these options. Since in this case the product type is just for this table, we are not reusing it. I'm going to do a local choice. I will keep as no. In this case, let's add the options. Beer, whiskey, vodka, and then this one, cachaça. We don't have a default choice because we need to select once we create the product, but we could have a default choice. If these choices were, for example, for status, pending, approved, and so on, we could have a default choice. We only have one choice, so we don't tag this selecting multiple choices, but we could if we could select more than one. We could also have another table to have the product category and do a lookup to that table, but I'm going to keep simple right now, and we are going to see this type of relationship later with another tables in here. The difference is that in this situation, it's more difficult to add a new choice. The developer would need to go and edit the choices in the table. If we had a lookup to another table, we could just add a new row to that table, and then we could already select based on the rows from that table. But let's keep it simple and use like this. We will have the opportunity to see in the future, in the next videos. Okay, now I created all the columns. If you want to see the columns that I created, since I know my publisher prefix, that's RBA, I can search here on top, RBA, and I'm going to see all the columns that I created, and this one that's the ID that was created also with my prefix. Now if I go back to the table, I can add all of them here just for us to visualize better. So let's see. We have product category, image, a description, and is bestseller. Click on save. This is the ID, it's unique. I will just hide by now. And here are the fields. I could edit some of them here. Product category, for example, since it's a choice, it shows me the choices in here. Let's add as a beer. The image I cannot load or edit from here, but it's possible to edit. Also the description, because it's a rich text, it's HTML. I cannot edit from here, but we are going to create in the next video a form to edit it. So hold on and we will see how it works. And then here we can set if it's a bestseller or no. Even though the default was no, since These ones were already created before I created the column, it won't set automatically. For the new ones, it will set as null because that's the default. Okay, now we have our table created. And in the next video, we are going to see how to add this table to a model-driven app. We are going to create a view to visualize this data, a form to edit it, and the app, that's the model-driven app where the internal user of the company can interact to add or edit products. There we'll be able to add image and also set the description. And later, we can also create a Canvas app connected to this table to show the products to the customers that are going to request products. So stay tuned and see you in the next lesson.